What can you say on a podcast?
You can say anything you want. Anything you like.
Oh, fuck you.
Nobody in Hollywood mixes brutal honesty with dry comedy quite like Harrison Ford, the legendary face behind Indiana Jones and Han Solo. After finishing Star Wars, Harrison Ford joked that success felt good, so he might as well keep going. When someone asked him about his master plan, his answer was painfully simple: become rich and famous. That is Harrison Ford at his most unfiltered and effortlessly funny. During one interview, the host saw him drinking water and tried to sneak in a question, only to panic when Harrison Ford took forever to swallow. Very few stars would say half the things Harrison Ford says out loud, and that is exactly why his honesty feels so refreshing. When asked if his life goal was to reboot every major franchise he helped create, Harrison Ford casually admitted he was completely on board. When the Blade Runner sequel offer came in, Harrison Ford did not pretend to be emotional. His first reaction was basically, "How much are they paying?" That one answer perfectly explains why Harrison Ford is not built like the average Hollywood legend. During another exchange about Canadian comedians, Harrison Ford clarified that although people sometimes think he is Canadian, he definitely is not. Then the joke flipped when the host suggested that plenty of people also think he is a humorist. But one of the funniest Harrison Ford stories came from Mark Hamill, who delivered a shockingly accurate impression of him. Mark Hamill remembered filming Star Wars and worrying about continuity after the trash compactor scene. He wondered whether Luke's hair should be wet, dirty, and completely messed up. According to Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford looked at him and basically said, "Kid, this is not that kind of movie." Then Harrison Ford added that if the audience was focused on Luke's hair, the whole movie was already in trouble. That single line showed the exact kind of practical, no-nonsense humor Harrison Ford became famous for. When someone told Harrison Ford he still looked attractive and asked how he stayed fit, he did not give a fitness speech. He simply said he had been blessed with that body and thanked them for noticing. That is the power of Harrison Ford. He can turn the simplest answer into a full comedy moment. Even the Indiana Jones theme music has become part of his personal curse. Harrison Ford joked that the music follows him everywhere, when he walks on stage, when he leaves the stage, and even when he went in for a colonoscopy. Most legends become softer with age, but Harrison Ford somehow became even sharper. He has grown into a master of deadpan comedy, with absolutely no patience for nonsense. During one panel, he told everyone that the other guests should probably speak too, because they had microphones in front of them. Then, moments later, when someone finally grabbed the mic, Harrison Ford immediately called them crazy for speaking. That is why every room feels more dangerous when Harrison Ford has a microphone. When interviewers bring up the idea that Harrison Ford has a grumpy public image, he shuts it down without even trying. The funniest part is that his reaction usually makes the grumpy Harrison Ford image even stronger. One fan once brought a rare Lego Millennium Falcon to him and explained how valuable it was. The fan said it had taken dozens of hours to build and meant a lot to him. Then he politely asked Harrison Ford to sign it. Harrison Ford agreed, but the whole moment became chaotic when the fragile model was handed over. The host had apparently suggested it would be funny if Harrison Ford destroyed it. And when the destruction happened, Harrison Ford made it clear the suggestion had been correct. It was terrible for the Lego, but perfect for comedy. Still, nothing captures Harrison Ford's unfiltered personality better than the time David Blaine performed a mind-bending card trick in front of him. David Blaine asked Harrison Ford to think of any card in the deck. Then he told him the card had somehow disappeared from the deck. After searching through the cards, Harrison Ford could not find it anywhere. Then David Blaine asked for a piece of fruit to be brought over. They cut open an orange, and somehow a folded card was sitting inside. When Harrison Ford opened it and saw his exact card, his reaction was priceless. He looked completely stunned, then told David Blaine to get out of his house. That was not just a magic reaction. That was peak Harrison Ford. During another interview about Blade Runner, the host mentioned that expectations were high because Ridley Scott was involved and Harrison Ford was also part of the project. Then the host corrected himself and said Harrison Ford was not just involved. He was actually in the movie. Harrison Ford responded with the kind of dry correction only he could deliver. On another press tour, someone asked if co-stars become close while doing wild adventure scenes together. Harrison Ford gave a brutally funny answer, joking that he met his co-star in the street and she was his for the price of a drink. When asked if he became emotional after putting the iconic wardrobe back on, Harrison Ford rejected the sentimental answer completely. He said no, he got paid. Nobody disrespects his own iconic films more casually than Harrison Ford. He treats one of the greatest careers in Hollywood like a job he accidentally became famous for. When someone listed Blade Runner, Han Solo, Indiana Jones, and all his legendary roles, Harrison Ford said the whole thing was actually boring. Then he launched into a long grocery store joke about broccoli. In the joke, a woman keeps asking a worker where the broccoli is, even after being told the store has none. The worker finally makes her spell words like cat and dog to set up the punchline. Then he asks her to spell the missing part in broccoli, forcing her to admit there is no G in broccoli. That lets him hit the punchline. That is what I've been trying to tell you. It was random, old school, and exactly the kind of joke Harrison Ford somehow makes work. When someone tried to test Harrison Ford on Indiana Jones trivia, the question was ridiculously specific.
They asked about the original whip's fall color in the first film. Harrison Ford gave the only honest answer possible: who cares? That is why his interviews work. He refuses to fake interest just because a question sounds important. During another interview, Donald Trump was brought up as a fan of Harrison Ford's role in Air Force One. The host mentioned that Donald Trump liked how Harrison Ford stood up for America in the movie. Harrison Ford immediately reminded everyone that Air Force One was just a movie. He basically told them it was not real life and should not be treated like a political manual. When the conversation shifted to J.J. Abrams, Harrison Ford kept repeating his name with that same dry confusion. Then, when asked about becoming Red Hulk, Harrison Ford admitted he had no idea the character would be red. He said red was not really his color. When asked what color he would choose instead, he said green even though that color was already taken. That is the kind of answer that sounds simple, but lands because Harrison Ford says it with complete seriousness. Harrison Ford has a rare gift: he can deliver the most savage line in the room without raising his voice. His face barely changes, but the joke hits twice as hard. In one comedy bit, he angrily reacts to an unexpected guest and asks how that person even got in. When told the meeting was arranged to help them bury the hatchet, Harrison Ford immediately wants out. Then he drops the final insult and walks away like the scene personally offended him. Days later, the bit continues with Chewbacca, and Harrison Ford calls him a big walking carpet. Somehow, even a Star Wars reference sounds colder when Harrison Ford says it. In another bizarre moment, a host asked Harrison Ford to pierce his ear. The host asked what the worst possible outcome could be. Harrison Ford calmly answered that he could bleed to death. That is exactly the type of reassurance you do not want from Harrison Ford. Then the whole ear-piercing moment became even funnier because Harrison Ford treated it like a questionable medical procedure. He was not comforting, not careful with the comedy, and not pretending the whole thing was normal. That is why people love him. Harrison Ford does not usually look like someone desperate to bond with co-stars, but Ryan Gosling became the exception. Their chemistry was so strong that the 40-year age gap almost disappeared. During the Blade Runner 2049 press tour, Ryan Gosling joked about the pressure of working with Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford played along by acting like Ryan Gosling should constantly remember who he was working with. Then Ryan Gosling flipped it and said Harrison Ford would remind him every day by asking if he knew who he used to be. The funniest part was when Harrison Ford kept struggling to say Ryan Gosling's name correctly. He kept landing on Ryan, then Gosling, then joking around with the name until the whole room broke. That awkward rhythm made the exchange even better. Harrison Ford usually treats press tours like jury duty, but with Ryan Gosling, he actually looks like he is having fun. When asked about accidentally punching Ryan Gosling during a fight scene, Harrison Ford did not act guilty. He casually said he misread the script. Then he added that Ryan Gosling stepped on his foot, so the punch basically made sense. When they showed the actual photo of the punch, Ryan Gosling's face made the story even funnier. Someone also asked Harrison Ford if he had kept any priceless Indiana Jones memorabilia. They assumed he must have a whip, a hat, or some legendary item from the set. Harrison Ford said no, because he did not want that kind of junk around his house. Then he added that he was already a very rich man. That answer is arrogant, hilarious, and somehow completely honest at the same time. At another event, Harrison Ford joked about Los Angeles being called the City of Dreams. Then he said all his dreams had come true there, including his dream of preparing. The joke fell into chaos, but that is often where Harrison Ford is funniest. Seeing Harrison Ford emotional is extremely rare. That is why his final goodbye to Indiana Jones felt so powerful. When a host thanked him on behalf of the fans and told him how much the character meant to people, Harrison Ford visibly struggled to hold back emotion. For a man known for dry sarcasm and sharp one-liners, that moment hit harder because it felt real. He sincerely thanked the fans and admitted it meant the world to him. That is the other side of Harrison Ford, hidden under all the grumpiness, jokes, and deadpan answers. During one fan interaction, a Star Wars fan said her favorite character was Padme. Then Harrison Ford stepped in, and the entire answer suddenly became awkward. He asked again who her favorite character was, forcing her to rethink everything while standing right in front of him. That is the danger of meeting Harrison Ford in person. Even your fandom answers are not safe. When asked to give one piece of advice to someone he cared about, Harrison Ford kept it brutally simple. His advice was to stay off the internet. The irony, of course, is that millions of people are watching these moments because of the internet. But even there, Harrison Ford had the perfect response. He told them not to start with him. And honestly, that is the most Harrison Ford ending possible.